Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for coming to today's WISE session, which is focused on career conversations with engineers. This is a Zoom meeting, so feel free to raise your hand to ask to be unmuted, to ask a question, or be active in the chat. We have 5 great panelists today who are working engineers in industry, so we welcome any questions that you have. But we do also have a list of prepared questions that we will be asking them. So welcome, my name is Alejandra Arguez, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm one of the program coordinators at the Idea Center. As next, I would like to have our panelists introduce themselves and what industry they are in. Daniela.
I'm Daniela. I work as an electrical engineer at Blue Marble Communications. I started here when I was a junior in college, like 2 years ago. And then I graduated and got a position as an engineer. We're a pretty small company. We only have like 20 employees, and we make modems and transceivers that go on spacecrafts like satellites. And I work mostly on PCB design and RF.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Zambrana, and I'm a software engineer here at Oracle. I work in the autonomous database team, and I too started like 2 years ago. I had an internship here as well, where I work with the Oracle CFS storage appliance team. And then I went on and graduated with my bachelor's in computer science, and eventually ended up in a full time opportunity here at Oracle.
Hi, my name is Kevin Napolitano. I'm from ATA Engineering in San Diego. We're an aerospace consulting firm, and I'm in the test group, and we do vibration testing on aerospace structures.
Hi, I'm Christina Rodriguez. I work at HP. I have a PhD in chemical engineering. We work in a big print division. So I'm technically an ink chemist there. We do ink formulations for large web press printers, so like the size of your apartment maybe. And we target our ink formulations for certain deliverables. So some people want things to look prettier, some things want to be more durable. So each ink program will target those deliverables.
Hi, I'm Skyla. I work at Southern California Design Company here in San Diego, and we're a design company that works on things all the way from simple medical devices to outdoor sports equipment.
Great, thank you all for introducing yourselves. Now for our first question is, tell us about your journey into engineering and what you think helped you succeed in becoming an engineer with the industry you are now in. And then again, we welcome any questions in the chat or raise your hand to unmute yourself.
So for me, I went to college without knowing what I wanted to major. I just started taking math classes and physics, and it was when I started taking electromagnetic classes that I really liked the aspect of electrical engineering. And I just went for it, basically. And I think my curiosity is what made me where I am now, because without actually doing some research to know what I wanted to do is the reason that I was interested in this field.
So I myself as well, like I started, I knew I wanted to do engineering as well, but I guess like when you're in high school, you don't really know exactly the types of engineers and their fields. So eventually I started looking into them, and I got interested in computer science, right? Which isn't technically an engineering, but it's very, very close. So I transferred into Georgia Tech to study computer science. And that's when I really began to learn all the varieties and distinct concentrations that you can do in computer science. And I think that one of the things that helped me succeed into becoming an engineer is just trying to search what you like, because in the engineering field, there's just so many options for everyone, and everyone has a chance to employ what they actually like into actual things that make a difference. And so I think that's one of the things that helps you is just making sure you're looking out for what you possibly like and what engineering may be fitting for you.
Okay, so I actually went to UC San Diego, Revelle College, and with a structural engineering major. The reason I chose structural engineering was because two of my friends' dads were engineers. One was an aerospace engineer and one was a civil structural engineer. So I decided to go to UCSD, and they had structural engineering. And so I chose that and graduated, got my master's at Stanford in aeronautics and astronautics to, I guess, fulfill the other dad's legacy. And out of college, I was sitting next to a friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, you should go contact these guys. They're looking for an engineer." And so that was CSA engineering right when I got out of college. So I was there for about 3 years. It was a great job. I did a passive damping design, vibration suppression, and that's where I got into my field. And after about 3 years, I decided I wanted to move back home to San Diego, and I came back and entered the PhD program at UCSD. And after a while, I didn't finish, but a friend of mine from CSA engineering told me that I should join a company in San Diego called ATA, go interview with them. And so I did, and I got into the test group, and I've been there for 22 years. And it's been a great job, and I love it. And I think that's really what's made me successful is I really enjoy my job. And I know a lot of people who have gone into engineering who really didn't like being engineers. And I think it's either hurt their career if they stayed in it, or they moved on and found something that they did love to do.
Right. So I had a pretty atypical journey. I started undergrad as an art history major, and so very, very different than engineering or science. But I always kind of had more of a artistic inclining, and I needed a job. So through FAFSA, they had jobs on campus, and I started working in the chemistry stockroom. And so graduate students would come and ask for, HCl or DCM and like a bunch of acronyms. And I was like, I don't know what you guys need. So I needed to kind of get a better background in chemistry. And, I had taken chemistry in high school, but it was much different. So I started taking the chemistry series, and I really enjoyed it. So I just took the full series. I went to undergrad at UCSB. And so it was a quarter system. So I took every quarter I took a different chemistry class. And then eventually I was just talking to my friends and my family, and they're like, maybe you should change your major to chemistry. So I eventually did, and then graduated undergrad with chemistry degree, and then worked at the National Lab in Berkeley for a couple years. And I was just just a scientist there, but other people I was working with were working towards a PhD, but we were all working on like very similar projects. So eventually I was like, well, I'm doing the same amount of work, but I'm not gaining anything. And so I figured I wanted to get my PhD, and everybody was very supportive there. So it was nice to have it's good to have a really good support system. Well, obviously with friends and family, but within wherever you're working, like if they were to tell me like, no, you won't be able to get a PhD, obviously it would be much more difficult. So definitely put yourself in a work environment that you feel comfortable and supported. And then in grad school, that the same thing. It was much more challenging. I think what helped me succeed there and in my industry now as an engineer is just having really good and strong problem solving skills and a lot of resilience, because you are going to get knocked down a lot, and not every project's going to work well. But you'll find what the answers you're looking for if you keep trying. And again, you want to work in an environment that is very our job is a lot of collaboration, and I'm not afraid to ask any of my coworkers a question or for help or advice. So I think that's also like not being afraid to ask for help was also a big thing for me.
So out of high school, I knew I wanted to go into engineering. But there's so many different areas of engineering. I wasn't really sure right away. I did get into UCSD though, as environmental engineering. So I started my first 2 years at UCSD as environmental engineer. And then after my second year, I switched over to mechanical at UCSD just to get a little bit more broader education inside of engineering. And I realized I could still take my technical electives in environmental and any other kind of focused areas of engineering that I wanted to. And then I graduated this past year. And shortly after I graduated, I got this job here at Southern California Design Company. And I've been working here for, almost a year now, I guess. So yeah, I know it can be tough in the beginning, kind of know exactly, even if you decide engineering or any sort of path to take, what specifically you want to do. I feel like it kind of just comes along in that journey, even where you start off might not be where you end up. But as you get more experience and you learn more, you kind of figure out what direction you want to take it.
Thank you all. We do have one question in the chat. A student is asking if anyone here works with AI/ML or data science.
I mean, HP does have, I guess, a big section of data science just because we do a lot. We get a lot of raw data from, our print files and looking at the image quality. So we have to cipher through that. But AI, the only thing we have is like virtual reality. That's not really the same as AI, but I know there is a section. I'm just not involved in it, but there is a niche there.
So here at Oracle, I don't personally work with AI, but machine learning and AI and data science is a very exciting field here at Oracle because we work with so much data because obviously a lot of storage systems, a lot of different ways that Oracle helps with data storage. That means you also get to work and learn with that kind of data. So we have a lot of positions like that here at Oracle.
Okay, so at ATA, we have a machine learning group that uses machine learning to characterize materials for finite model analysis.
I hope that answered your question, Shasta. And again, feel free to ask any questions that you have. One of the next questions that I have, I think is a very good interview question. What does a typical day for you in your role look like?
For me, my typical day depends on how far in a project you are. Like if we're at the beginning, I can spend all day just working on my computer doing just schematics and layouts, then having meetings to review what I'm doing and update the team or how far I am at that stage. We're like at the middle or end of delivering a product, then I can spend my day just in the lab working on a PCB that I manufacture and then trying to figure out if it's working how it should be, or if it's not, then I should try to fix it so that it will perform like it should. And that's basically what I do, either like on my computer or on the lab.
Right, so Oracle has a very flexible work environment, and it's usually a bit different from like the established 9 to 5. Usually it just means that you have a self-paced environment and essentially just make sure you're making decent progress on what you work on. And as long as you're meeting your deadlines reasonably, you should be fine, right? So I guess like if I had to describe a work day, it would be like, sometimes I have team meetings where we go over the customer issues or or we go over current projects that we want to work on, or projects that are like we're working on and we want to check on progress, any issues that we run into. And we also usually have each member of the team has assigned a certain thing that they're working on. And for example, if perhaps I have to work on a bug or such, that's what I usually spend most of my time in, coding and added features or fixing something, and eventually like testing it and getting the results. And usually you always have your team, right? And your team is usually going to be there if you have questions. And especially starting a new role, that's going to be something that you will have. You'll have questions, right? And yeah, pretty much it. Just like doing what you're supposed to do, and then like making sure that you have a support system there.
Okay, so my job I do different things on different days and weeks. So most of our tests are large aerospace vehicles, and so we will travel to a test site, set up our test, run the test, analyze the data, give the results to the customer, and then come home. So that's one aspect of it. Those tests usually take about a week. When we have downtime, when we're at home, we're either writing reports or my main role is usually to develop new methods to help us either stay competitive or get a leg up on our competition or make us more efficient so we can do more of these tests. And lately, I've transitioned to the technical director role, and I see my job when I'm at home is really to coach up our younger engineers so that I can eventually retire and our group will stay strong when I do.
So I started my job right before COVID hit, December before. So it looks a lot different than it did then. It is more flexible, which I like. So if I'm again writing reports or I have a lot of meetings that day, then I won't necessarily go on site, kind of go on site as needed. Which has been good and bad because it does kind of deter some of the collaboration that I mentioned before. Before I could just go up to somebody's desk for a quick question, and now I'm like pinging them on Zoom or sending them an email, and it takes a little bit of time for them to respond. But if I do go on site, it's to talk to a technician or do a like lab experiment, like more wet chemistry stuff. Look at print samples. We'll have like a bit, now we're getting to have more of my colleagues come on site, and we can like all review large samples from one of our web presses or something. If I'm at home, it's similar to Kevin. It's report writing, it's data analysis, it's sitting through meetings, getting experiments planned. So some weeks I'm on site every day, and some weeks I'm just doing more data analysis. So also kind of to touch what Daniela said, it depends where you're at in the program. If you're hitting a milestone, you're probably pretty deep into data analysis, report writing that you want to present to your directors or upper management. Yeah, so it's nice to have the variability.
So a typical workday for me, kind of similar to how Daniela said, it really depends kind of where we are with our projects. If it's kind of towards the beginning, we're having a lot of brainstorm meetings. So I work with a couple other engineers as well as an industrial designer to just kind of get those initial ideas out there, brainstorm how we're going to tackle the project that we're given. That beginning part of a project too, we are really involved with the client. So we get clients come in with their ideas and then we discuss it with them, really trying to make their idea a reality, create it into this world. So that's kind of what the beginning of a project might look like. And then once we sort of have a direction on it, I'll be spending a lot of time in SolidWorks, modeling up everything so that, sometimes that can take a couple days or however long it's going to take to get that project really going. And then as it moves on, we might be into the prototyping phase. So then I'm communicating with vendors on getting some parts made so that we can test them. And then even farther on than that, we'll have meetings with vendors for like production and manufacturing. So after we have our design, really making sure that this is going to be compatible with manufacturing methods, and making sure everything's going to turn out the way we want it to, with, different fits and tolerances and stuff like that. So yeah, some days can be a lot of meetings and I'm talking to a lot of people and I'm coming into the office and brainstorming with my fellow coworkers. And then other days, I might just be on SolidWorks and, really getting in some time and developing our ideas in the 3D model.
That's great. Thank you. And then my next question is there a project that sticks out to you from your undergraduate career that solidified your passion for the engineering field?
So I went to San Diego State and we had to do a senior project for our last year. And it had to do with everything that you learn in your 4 years in college. My team and I, when we were there, we had to make an electrocardiogram, an ECG. And this was the first time that I worked making something from zero, including like the documentation and doing presentations, trying to sell it to our professor. It had software and hardware. So the software was a cell phone app that could display the heartbeat, and the hardware is what was measuring the heartbeat and sending the signal via Bluetooth. I work on the hardware and I help with the design, simulations, making a prototype to see if it was working, then actually manufacturing the PCB, soldering the components, and finally making a housing so that we could have a finished product.
For me, it was when I was studying also computer science at Georgia Tech. I started pretty much kind of researching what I wanted to do, right? And I was able to approach a grad student, right? And I talked about how I wanted to work on a research project because I've never done research before. And that research project consisted of BACnet automation, which is it has to do with just pretty much rule formation of all magnet systems, so like fridges and washing machines, and they all have some sort of rules, air conditioners. And with that project, I pretty much didn't know anything of what I was doing at the beginning, which was challenging, right? Because I was a junior in this research project and I was starting to work on something that I had never done before. And I think that was probably what kind of solidified why I like engineering, because by challenging myself and challenging myself to learn new methods and new programs, everything, languages, I pretty much was able to realize that was something that I could do by myself even, or just something that I wanted to do because it was just exciting, because learning new things throughout that project was rewarding. And I think that's probably the biggest project that really made me think that I wanted to do what I was doing.
I'm going to answer this a little bit differently. What I really loved about my undergraduate career were the courses. I got them and they were fun. There were no projects in my undergrad that I particularly enjoyed though, but that was good as well because they were civil engineering design courses, and I found out that I did not want to be a civil structural engineer. So in a sense, it helped out.
So like I mentioned before, I wasn't an engineer in undergrad. I kind of figured out that I wanted to be an engineer when I was working at the National Lab in Berkeley. Because in undergrad, we were doing a lot of theoretical research and a lot of wet chemistry of smaller molecules. We started getting into polymer synthesis as well. But it was more fundamentals as opposed to real life things that were going to go into the world. And once I started working at the National Lab, we did membranes for artificial photosynthesis and so for solar fuel cells. That was really cool to think, what I'm researching now, what I'm developing will someday go out to the real world and become a product, and I could say I made that. So I think that kind of shifted my preferences from more fundamental to engineering.
So for me, it really wasn't till my last 2 quarters, basically last quarter almost at UCSD. So I don't know how many of you are in mechanical engineering, but you'll have your 156A and B, your senior design course. And so for me, basically that class is almost exactly what I do now. So in that class, there's a bunch of different sponsored projects, and you're assigned a team. And this project, you got to come up with a solution for it. So you got to kind of design whatever the task is for that project, and that's basically my day here. And funny enough, the project that I worked on at UCSD was sponsored by the company that I now work for. So my group, I think it was 4 of us. We had a project from the company I work for now. And then we finished that in that quarter. And then luckily enough for me, the company I work for now, Southern California Design, was hiring at the time. So I applied for the job, and that's how I got here. So basically that last quarter, that senior design project is basically my day now, every single day. We get different projects, we got to find a solution for it, and design a bunch of cool different things.
So we have a question for Kevin in the chat. Kevin, which focus sequence did you choose in SC?
Okay, so when I was an undergrad, which was in 1985 to 1989, there was only one focus group, and it was civil structures.
Okay.
So if I were to do it again, I would focus more on aerospace structures. I really enjoyed the composites classes that Dr. Kazmaka gave, for example.
Thank you. So then the next question is, which of your skills do you believe are most important to being an engineer?
I think communication is the most important one, because you never work alone. So you have to communicate with the other that's working on the same project to let them know where you are or what are you doing. And if you're behind, how can it be solved?
I think if I had to choose one skill, it would probably be resilience, because when you're working as an engineer, you're gonna try a lot of things that perhaps you've never worked on before, and things you've never really even heard about before. So there you will encounter a lot of obstacles along the way. And honestly, I would say the expectation isn't that everything will go as planned. I think the expectation is that there's probably going to be something you didn't consider, an edge case or something conflicting, right? So if I had to say, the skill would be resilience, because you need to be able to encounter these obstacles and just go ahead and think of how you can get over them as well.
So I'm going to say technical competence and knowing how to be part of a team. So the technical competence part is so that you can contribute to the team in whatever your specific field is. And then also being part of a team that does good work in areas that you're bad at. And so by having all of you together, you can cover all your bases and get a project to completion.
Yeah, everybody's been saying a lot of what I wanted to say. So good job, guys. Yeah, I agree. Like I said before, HP is very big on communication and collaboration. And I think I learned a lot of resilience in grad school, unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe now. But HP specifically, we have something called lean problem solving. So it's basically just like cutting out all of like the excess weight that you might want to explore, or you might still have questions about, but you need to focus on what the actual problem is, and get there as fast as possible and work with your team as agile as possible. So I think, again, problem solving, but lean problem solving is just to focus on what you actually need to work on.
I know it's gonna sound repetitive at this point, but I do believe that communication is a huge skill that will help you a lot in engineering, and especially I feel in my workday. Um, and it's not just communicating to fellow engineers. You need to be able to communicate to a bunch of different people. So for me, I might have a meeting with a client that has no engineering background, but they may have an idea that's very engineering heavy, or has a lot of mechanical design. So being able to communicate with them is really key, but then also be able to communicate with your fellow coworkers. So like I said, I work with an industrial designer very closely, and as well as other engineers. So being able to understand who you're communicating to, what their kind of understanding is, and still being able to communicate your idea, but to a different set of different people. And then as well, like we work with a lot of vendors, and they might be from different countries. So you really want to make sure that the information you're sending over is very clear, and that they're going to be able to understand what you're saying. So yeah, communication. I know it sounds repetitive, but I do think it's a huge part, because even if you have a great idea, but you can't communicate to other people, it's basically lost.
Thank you all. I want to remind our folks in the audience to ask any questions before we wrap up. What is your advice for students interested in working in industry?
It's never too late to apply to internships, or never too early. If you want to go into industry, it's better if you get experience before you even graduated, in my personal experience. And because when you start working, it's not the same as college. It's way different, and it's not as theoretical and as it was in college. So yeah, I would say apply to internships and start doing some research on what field you want to go.
I think if I had to give any advice, it's just like pretty much like don't be afraid of not being capable, because I feel like usually, especially when you work, when you're studying, and you have other classmates, right? And they may know about something more than you do, and perhaps like a lot of topics that you may be interested in intimidate you as well. And I just think everyone should also consider that it's okay. If you don't know anything now, that's all right. Everyone has to start from scratch. So if there's something that you genuinely want to learn about, don't be intimidated by not knowing about it.
Yeah, I guess my advice is that you should spend some time and get to know yourself. Find what you enjoy doing, either within the company you join, or within another company if needed, and get good at it. And it might not be technical. You may start out as an engineer, but then enjoy doing business development, or actually running projects, or maybe something else. But know yourself and be honest with yourself as you progress through your career.
Yeah, I think I was kind of at a crossroads in grad school if I wanted to do academia, so do like the professor route or do industry. And I agree with Daniela. I think the internship really helped me decide, and because I was in academia my whole undergrad and grad school career, and the national lab was kind of somewhere in between, so I didn't really have a good understanding, and the internship kind of let me see what I would be doing on a day-to-day, and who I would be working with, and if that was something. And it is variable across different companies. Some companies don't have good like life work balance, and so obviously I wouldn't have wanted to work there. So definitely try to get as many internships as you can, get as many experiences as you can do. I did undergrad research as well, which I really enjoyed, and that is more of an academic route. So yeah, try as many different opportunities as you can get.
I would say don't be afraid to be creative. As you go through your education, you're going to learn a lot of information, and with problems you're faced with, you might see kind of like the first simple solution, and it might be like kind of the obvious solution, but there's 1,000 different ways to do the same thing. And sometimes if you just, think a little bit more about it, be creative, there might be a better way to do it, or one that just fits the lines of whatever solution you're trying to fix, whatever project you're working on. So, a lot of what I work on, it's not only how well it functions, but also sometimes how it looks, because this might be a product that's going to be, a consumer product. So you want it to work well, you want it to look nice too. So, at first glance to, create a very mechanical locking mechanism, something, really big and bulky, and yeah, it might be really secure, but be a little bit more creative, start to think about what knowledge you've acquired over the years, and you might be able to find that you have a better solution. So I would say just don't be afraid to be creative, kind of think over some ideas, and you'll be surprised what you can come up with sometimes.
Then we have a question in the chat for Skyla. You mentioned using SolidWorks. When were you introduced to this?
So actually at UCSD, we had a course that kind of started us very introduction course into SolidWorks. And then interesting enough, my last 2 years at UCSD were affected by COVID. So it was all online, and I happened to have an Apple computer. So SolidWorks didn't run on it. So then I taught myself how to use AutoCAD. So I was first introduced SolidWorks at UCSD, and I would have used it continuing on my education, but then I had to, just because of the computer I had available to me, learn a different software. But as I started this company, they were super helpful in kind of getting me back on track, getting used to the interface and everything. I did a couple courses here as I started my job. So I think, overall, as I'm sure the other engineers can say too, we all use probably different programs and softwares and stuff. But a lot of times I think companies will, if it's something new to you, they're still going to help you kind of get used to it if they find you're a good candidate for the job. But yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Okay. And then for our parting thought, as a reminder, feel free to ask any burning questions, but we are on our last question on our end. So parting thought from our panelists.
I think the other engineers just said everything that I wanted to say, like get to know you yourself, like what you're capable of, what you can improve of yourself, because engineering is not easy. So it's better if you get experience, you get to know yourself, and yeah, it's really hard, but it's worth it.
I guess like if I had to say anything else is like it's okay to get rejected, because I feel like no one really talks about it. Like you apply to a bunch of places, you're probably gonna get more rejections than offers. So like don't like let that discourage you. Like if there's something you like, just apply for it, don't disqualify yourself. And then also don't be afraid of rejections. Like I promise you it's better to get a rejection than to regret it later.
Oh, that's actually a great point. So, make them reject you. Don't reject yourself. My parting thought, I think people have already stated this, but when you start your career, don't isolate yourself. Nobody expects you to have all the answers. Ask questions, develop a network of good people around you that you can go to get questions answered. And it's not all on you. You really are part of a team, and be part of a team.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody has been saying. I think I had no idea that I wanted to be an engineer when I was in high school or college or for a long time. So everyone's path is going to be different, and that's okay. You don't have like Kevin said, you don't have to have all the answers, like everybody said. I'm a first generation college grad, and so it was really scary, and I felt like my friends and family were very supportive, which was important to me. So yeah, don't be afraid to try new things. I definitely got rejected a lot, like Stephanie said, and that's okay too. Like not everything's gonna work, not everybody's gonna want to give you a job or an internship. But definitely put yourself out there, and I promise it'll work out for however it's supposed to.
I would say just don't be afraid if you don't know exactly what career path you want to go into now. Things change along the journey, and so I would say, don't be afraid to change it. It's never too late to change your interest if you find something that you really do like, but maybe you were set on a different path. For me, I really didn't realize I could work for a design company, or that these kind of companies existed really until that last quarter at UCSD, which at that point, I was basically already graduating, and I hadn't had an internship before that. One of the internships I applied for was canceled because of COVID and stuff. So I really had no experience, but at the end, I found that I really liked kind of designing these different projects, and luckily I got a job at a design company. But overall, I just want to say that don't be scared if you don't know what you want to do now. I think as you move along, you'll find what interest you want. And if that means changing the path a little bit, I think, go for it. It's never too late to kind of figure out what you want to do.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to thank our panelists, so Daniela, Stephanie, Kevin, Christina, and Skyla, on joining us today to share their daily life, but also what led them to where they're at. Again, I'll just allow for a few seconds for any last minute questions. Okay, we'll go ahead and wrap up then. Thank you again so much for attending. As I mentioned, this workshop was recorded, and we'll be posting this on YouTube and sharing it with everyone. Okay, thank you again for joining.
Great, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.